Wait, are you Italian?
What kind of a question is that?
Don't play coy with me, Fabius.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages,
Monster Hunter as a series is one known for quite a few things, and one that I heavily appreciate is just pure love, dedication, and detail put into these games to a degree that few other games can match. Things that you may never even realize after hundreds of hours of gameplay, things that might assist you in your hunts, or just things that were revealed or announced outside of the game that might change the way you think about wilds in some way, shape, or form. Today I want to talk about a number of those lesser known things of interest, and we've got some pretty obscure stuff in here today to talk about too. First up then is one that people have started to talk about the last few days, but is sort of the inspiration to do another one of these videos right now, which is the fact that frenzy virus can be cured around 6% faster if you have the hot drink effect active, which means even in hot areas like the oilwell basin's lower levels, if you are running gore magala 2-step bonus, you could see a slight improvement if you have a hot drink. It's not like having a hot drink is like mutually exclusive with cold drinks, there's no negative, you can have both effects active, but usually if you see someone with both of them on, it's because they made a mistake, and so now as far as I'm concerned, every time that I have ever made that mistake personally, it was actually because it was 100% on purpose, and I was trying to be more effective with my gore magala 2-set bonus. That said, the fun part is that this is literally in the hunter notes for frenzy, but no one ever reads the hunter notes properly, and on a similar wavelength, check out these hunter notes for vespoids. They directly tell you that you can shoot bright moss at a monster, and vespoids will start to attack the monster if they are nearby, and that is another useful niche hunting tip that most people aren't very aware of. Next up then is a fun one that you might know, but maybe not the whole part of it, which is that in Monster Hunter Wilds, the arch-tempered monster versions have noticeable visual changes to their design, past just like a slightly different visual tint over the whole model like they used to get. Specifically, Ray Dow has a bit of the pattern that is on his wing membrane changed to being blue instead of the orangey brown color on normal Ray Dow. Arch-tempered Duna's stripes along her body are just a straight up different pattern to regular Duna. Arch-tempered new Udra's glow effect that comes out of its body, most notably from the eyes is the easiest place to see it, is like a purpley glow instead of the normal bluish glow. And then for Arch-tempered Jin Dahaad, he just looks a lot cleaner, a lot fresher, like normal Jin Dahaad's metal body parts look really like old and worn out, whereas Arch-tempered Jin Dahaad looks like he has freshly shaped copper all along his body. So there is a pattern now of Arch-tempered monsters that not only have noticeable moveset changes, but actual tangible design differences too. Next up today then, let's talk about the scaling in wilds and how just, well, wild that it's gotten. There was a post on Reddit relatively recently that made a very interesting point. The Elderbreaker, the cannon in the gogmazios quest, does over 67,000 damage when used. Fatalis, the literal final boss of the Iceborne expansion, has around 66,000 health when fought solo. This means that the Elderbreaker, a singular use siege weapon from the end of base game wilds, could one-shot the final monster released in Iceborne. That said, this is of course a bit of a silly comparison too, because that's Fatalis' solo health pool, and gogmazios cannot be fought with a technical solo health pool, as it is at absolute minimum a 5-player quest because you have 4 force support hunters, and the scaling doesn't change even if you have more support hunters, which you can have up to a total of 8 people on the hunt, including yourself. So that in itself isn't fair. Not to mention that of course the Elderbreaker is factored into the balancing for the quest, but for a more meaningful comparison, Arch-tempered Jin Dahaad has 63,000 health when fought solo, and that is actually only 3,000 less than Fatalis, the final monster of Iceborne. So while the initial comparison we made here is very much missing important context, the point that it's making is still sort of valid. Different games will always have different scaling, of course, but Wilds' numbers right now are becoming comparable to the end of Iceborne numbers, and we still have the whole expansion to add on top here. Next up, a sort of mini tip. Paint pods. What are they used for? Well, as far as most people are concerned, absolutely nothing. But they do actually have one specific purpose. On multi-monster quests, or when you're just like exploring in the field, if you hit a monster with a paint pod, you will set it as the active target. That means when you do things like auto run on your sacred, for example, that will be the target that you go to. That's the monster you will run at. This mostly matters for a multi-monster hunt that is also multiplayer, where the leader can go to the monster that they want to fight first, throw a paint pod on them, and then the other player will now have their sacred auto run changed to being that monster instead of the original one. One final gameplay affecting thing then is more just a neat fact than anything most people will find actionable, which is tremor resistance as a skill. This is the skill that prevents tremors. It has 3 levels to it, like most resistance type skills, but what is interesting is that there is not a single attack from any monster in Monster Hunter Wilds right now that requires tremor resist level 3 to ignore. You can ignore any tremors in the game with only level 2, and it's not the most important thing to know, of course, but I do think it's quite neat, and it could affect the way that you choose to make some builds in the future, depending on what monsters have. After that, let's talk about Fabius with a bit of a concept art that was recently released of him. Nothing crazy, just some nice art, while I speak about the actual thing that I want to, which is that I'm pretty sure I found the origin of Fabius's new name. He was, of course, originally the Ace Lancer, but then given his proper name of Fabius, which is quite a unique name, and so it rung a bell when I randomly read an article about an old Roman lad named Quintus Fabius Maximus Vericosus. Yes, Romans with high status had insane names, but who am I to say that, given that my Monster Hunter character has one of those double-barreled Latin middle names too? That said, part of his name was Fabius, and he was in charge of the Roman military for a time in which he essentially invented the idea of the war of attrition, meaning winning a war by dwindling down your opponent's resources instead of winning the war with big flashy battles and taking down their leader. For the tactic of his, he was given a title that translates to the Delayer, and he was also called the Shield of Rome. All those things combined sounds pretty much exactly like how I would describe a lance player who was also in control and in command, so it feels like a dead ringer for the inspiration of Fabius being called Fabius in Wilds. Next up, we have some fun concept art to talk about. First up is dahaad here. Main things of note are that they specifically point out that he has a spike coming out of either of his palms and then also the bottom of each of his back feet as well, and these are essentially used like ice picks when he climbs things. So when he climbs up walls or when he climbs up pillars, it's not like his claws digging in necessarily or him freezing himself to the surface or stuff like that. It's these spikes that you probably will never notice when fighting him in game, and I think that's a really cool detail explaining how he works. They also showed concept art of some Palico armors. The Lala Barina one here is just nice to be able to see, but the Balahara one I appreciate a lot just because it shows the dedication of the design team to making things feel functional. They made a mech suit for your cat because it was a fun and silly concept that they wanted to do, but just because it's silly doesn't mean it has to be nonsensical, and this is essentially just them explaining mechanical functions of how it should move in a way that makes some realistic sense for what it is, and it's awesome to see that in the concept art for a Palico armor of all things. Then one final bit of concept art for Guardian Rathalos, but the most important here is the actual bit of translation work in this. One of these points here is talking about the specific pattern of Guardian markings used in the game, and compares it to Jomon pottery. This is pottery from the Jomon period in Japan, with some of this pottery dating back as far as nearly 15,000 BCE, and the patterns were mostly created by pressing ropes into the clay, creating these very uniform impressions, and that is sort of what they wanted to represent with the Guardian patterning in general. You could argue that it being the rope-based patterns is sort of like the fact that they're tied up, the fact that they are not free, in the same way that Arkveld's chain blades are representative of that too, and you can also see recognizable patterns in some of these pottery pieces that I'm showing you here to the remnants of Wyveria that were left behind too. It is a very sort of a thread of design choice in between all of these things from old Wyveria, and while it doesn't really give us insights into the future of the story, it does show us that the devs used a really cool real-world reference from what is, by human standards, an ancient civilization when designing the aesthetics of Wyveria and its creations. Finally then, let's take a short trip to Japan. No, not really, but I wish. Monster Hunter is currently running a collaboration event with Universal Studios Japan called the Wood Feast. They've got a really fun fire pit set up with proper models, beautiful Monster Hunter-y decor around the place. The meals are all specifically based off of either particular dishes, feasts, or just the ingredients used in the barbecue grilled meals, and it's all just really cute and lovely, and it's one of the reasons that I wish it was easier to visit Japan from Canada, because I would love to experience this in person. That said, when going here and getting a meal, there are also codes that you can get to receive prizes inside of game in Wilds, which specifically are a recolor of the Woodwood Palico outfit, which is just decent, it's nice, it just gives them a cool USJ themed hat, but the real star of the show is a pendant that is a Woodwood driving a little toy Conga Lala car, and I absolutely adore this thing. It's just so ridiculously cute and silly, and I wish I had it in my life, but hey, you win some, you lose some, I guess. At least there's still a Woodwood on my head, and there are still some people in the world that get to enjoy this too. That just about does it for today, then everyone. A collection of a bunch of things that you probably didn't know about either inside of Monster Hunter Wilds itself, or some of them things from outside of the game that can still affect or enhance your experience to know about too. I love the amount of depth that you can get into when talking about Monster Hunter, the details that the developers get into when designing stuff or coming up with names even, and I love sharing this stuff with you guys as well. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and feel free to share any of your own little hidden details or secrets about the game in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.